A Thousand Ever Evers, Chapter 1. June 12, 1963. Now get this. There's a boy in Jackson so rich that when he finished high school, his daddy bought him a brand new car. At least that's what I heard. In my family, we don't have that kind of money. But my uncle gives a whole dollar to any picket who graduates Acorn Elementary School. It's a tradition. So here I am, soaring through the sky on my swing that hangs from the oak tree, when Uncle Bump calls out the door of his shed. Go on, get your brother. He'll take you. He stretches a dollar bill between both hands, and I jump right off. Sure, it's not good enough for a car, but that dollar can buy a whole lot of good, like 20 Hershey bars. After my brother graduated elementary school, he bought a baseball. But I'm not going to waste my dollar on something dumb. I want something important, like dye to turn my flower-colored dress new for my first day of school. Mama will be proud you're spending your dollar to make a bright impression at County Colored, Uncle Bump tells me. It's West Thunder Creek Junior High School, I tell him, and stuff the dollar in my sock. Sure, I'm going to the Negro Junior High School, but a school's a school. Folks should call it by its proper name and make it sound important. Don't dilly-dally, Addie Ann, Uncle Bump says. He pulls the harmonica out of his pocket and blows a chord. And it's real good to hear him sound those notes, because ever since our boss, Old Man Adams, got the whooping cough, Uncle Bump hasn't had time to play music. Mama's bringing home some hen tonight, he says. Then he sinks down the steps of the shed and slides that harmonica across his lips. I'm heading across the tracks to the white side, and I reckon some furry company won't hurt. My cat, Flapjack, and me have a secret code. When I whistle and click my tongue twice, he comes running. Tweet, click, click, tweet, click, click. Other folk thinks it's magic, but here he comes, dashing across the pine needles, purring as he threads a figure 8 round my ankles. When we pass Brother Babcock's chicken shack, my stomach growls. And when we get to Daisy's dry goods, I kick up the dirt on the path, because I've been itching to buy a real new dress in there. But right about now, we don't have the money. As always, once we cross the railroad tracks, everything seems whiter and brighter. And I don't just mean the people who live here. The fresh painted shingles and the white picket fence gleam in the late afternoon sun. Even Flapjack's tan fur lights up a fiery orange, and my feet are glad to walk on pavement. By the time we get to the edge of Mr. Mudge's place, the sun's diving into the horizon. Flapjack and me pass by Mr. Mudge's greenhouse and a stable full of cows and pigs on the way to the farm where my brother works. Now don't squish the squash, I tell Flapjack before we head across the leafy rows to meet Elias, who's bent like a rainbow over the tomatoes. He's been working this land since he was 5. Uncle Bump says you've got to take me to get the dye, I say, and hold up the dollar to prove it's true. But Elias stares straight past me like I'm not even here. Mama always says he's half legs, half smile. But today his grin is gone. His eyes are sad and distant. What's the matter, I ask. He's probably worried up about getting into college, so I tell him, I bet you'll even get a scholarship to Morehouse. Then I'll come to Georgia and visit you and we'll shut up, he says. Usually Elias doesn't live on the edge of his mind like me, so right about now, I don't know what to think. Don't you know about Medgar, he asks. What's that? Medgar Evers got shot, down in Jackson, late last night. Someone killed. His voice stretches and tightens. Then he swipes the side of his hand under his nose. That's what he does when he's getting close to tears. Usually it stops them from sliding down. Here's one guy I never heard of get shot dead, and now my brother's all ripped up and I'm just about crazy. He a friend, I ask? No. He owe you money? No. Elias rolls his eyes. Well, if he ain't a friend, he don't owe you money. What's the matter? Don't you know anything, he asks. I turn away. Elias knows I know something. Otherwise, why did I get the highest score on the geography quiz in the whole 6th grade? Okay, sure, there are only 4 kids in the 6th grade at Acorn Elementary, but still, a 96 is a 96. I wanted to remind Elias of this, but my throat squeezes shut. I swipe my hand under my nose, but my tears get out anyway. My brother puts his hand on my shoulders, tries to turn me around. Sorry, he says. Sometimes I forget you're a little kid. 7th grade's not little, I tell him. Then I blink a lot to get the tears to stay inside. Now come on, tell me. Who's this Edgar Evers? His name is Medgar Evers, Elias says. He's from the movement. I nod so my brother will think I know what he's talking about. But I wonder why he can't answer my questions plain and simple. If he's so smart, why doesn't he tell me this? Why do they call it a movement? How can he swipe under his nose and stop crying? And why did Medgar Evers' mama give him such a silly name? Well, someone killed him, Elias said, and looks away again. Left 3 young children without a daddy. I reckon Elias probably knows how those poor children feel. Our daddy died of pneumonia when Elias was 4. Mama still says, your daddy went to heaven proud of his little boy. Whenever she says that, Elias grins, but truth be told, I get this hollow feeling in my chest because it's not fair. I was nothing but a lump in Mama's tummy when Daddy met his maker. He never got the chance to be proud of me. He never watched me jump double dutch. He never tasted my honey cake. He never saw my 96 on the geography quiz. Daddy missed my whole life because he went and died of pneumonia a couple months before I was born. But as I feel thinking about Daddy, I know Elias feels worse. So here I am, trying to think of a way to help him feel better, but I can't. Still, Elias rubs his hand over my head like I'm his good luck charm, and I get the notion he likes knowing I'm here. I follow my brother across the pumpkin patch into the forest on Mr. Mudge's land. We don't say a word. All we hear are blackbirds chirping in the trees. We cross the thick woods to the parking lot of Mr. Mudge's corner store. Then we head out of the lot and turn down the road to the Very Fine Fabric Shop. At the Very Fine Fabric Shop, Elias doesn't take but 2 seconds to get caught up chatting with my best friend Delilah's second cousin Bessie. Bessie's in 10th grade. She cleans all the shops on the white side of town. And I can't deny it. Bessie's fetching. She's got green eyes and all kinds of curves. I reckon I shouldn't be too surprised that the whole while I'm picking out the dye, and I could use some help deciding the color, Elias is yapping with Bessie about that Medgar guy. So without a hint of advice, I choose yellow and pay. And even though it's getting dark, Elias won't leave the store. Not till Bessie sprays the counters and sweeps the floors. The sky's between hawk and buzzard when at long last Elias and me set off home. I know Mama won't be happy with us, but that doesn't seem to bother my brother. The whole way back, Flapjack weaves around my calves while Elias talks about that Medgar guy and the movement and to get us our rights. I reckon my brother thinks he's the Reverend and he's got to convert me to the fighting side. Now everybody's got some fire, some rage, he says. It's how you use your fire that counts. While we cross the tracks, I tell him to stop preaching. I'm just trying to help, Elias says. Then he shakes his head like he's 30 years older than me, not just 5. By the time we get home, the sun's under the earth. Elias and me slog into the kitchen where Mama's sitting at the table with Uncle Bump. As expected, she's in a dither. There's no sweet smell of hen wafting to the house. Worse, her usual, I've been working hard and I'm glad I'm home smile is gone. Where you been? She snaps. My bottom lip shakes. I hate how that happens. Then everyone can tell I got the fidgets. I wonder why I've got to have a giveaway lip. Sorry, I tell her. I pull out a chair and sit. And I don't know how I think so fast under pressure, but I do. I cross my fingers under the kitchen table so God won't hold anything against me. What actually happened is, I say, I'm about to tell Mom and Uncle Bump how a big mean dog came and chased Flapjack up a tree right outside the Very Fine Fabric Shop. I'm about to tell them that no matter how much I whistled and clicked, Flapjack wouldn't come on down. I'm about to tell them that I left Flapjack there, that if I left Flapjack there, that dog would have eaten my poor cat for supper. But before I do, Mama cuts her eyes at me real mean and says, if there's one thing I can't stand, it's a fibber. And I just put my lips back together right there. Mama turns to Elias. I've been worried sick. You know how I feel about you being out late, especially when you got your sister with you. She's just a little girl, Elias. Sorry, Mama, Elias says. I'm not little, I said. Uncle Bump tries to change the subject. He bows his head. Thank you, Lord, for the food you placed before us, he says. There's a bowl of gray boiled potatoes in the center of the table, and one thing's clear. They sure aren't hen. Mama probably fixed up the hen so good that the Tate family ate it all, and there wasn't any left to bring home. This looks delicious, Elias says. He spears a potato with his fork. But Mama, she yanks that forkful of potato right out of my brother's hand. I don't want to see no one eating till I get an explanation. The fork trembles in Mama's hand because she's so worried and mad. Being worried and mad is like biscuits and gravy for Mama. The two just go together. We were picking out dye for Addie Ann when we run into someone to talk to, Elias said. It was real important. But Mama doesn't see it that way. Not at all. She points her potato fork at my brother, then at me. When I send my kids over to the white side, I don't expect them to come through that door after the sun has set. Mama's so angry, she doesn't even ask what the color dye I have in my sack. Now, who's so important to talk to when it's already getting dark? It was just Bessie, Elias says. She was working at the shop. We got to talking about Medgar Evers and... It seems Mama heard the news too. She sets down her potato fork, closes her weary eyes, and starts praying for the dead man's soul. But her prayer sounds more than like complaining. Dear Lord, she says, that Medgar didn't deserve to die. He'd been stirring up trouble, trying to get into them schools mixed up, colors and whites, as they should. And he'd been helping sign up Negro voters, Lord, because don't every person supposed to have a voice in these United States? What's so special about the vote? Mom always carries on about it, but what's the difference could one of her votes make anyway? Well, one thing's clear. She thinks Medgar Evers' work to help Negroes vote is more important than eating dinner while it's hot. Now Mama shakes her head just like she can't believe this Medgar guy's dead and gone. Lord, you listen to me, she said. You bless Medgar's hard-working, full of courage soul. After that, how am I supposed to eat? Hen or no hen? My stomach's knotted up knowing someone can get killed for doing heaps of good. Chapter 2. June 16, 1963. Old Man Adams, our boss, comes from a long line of white folk. He used to own the 500-acre cotton plantation that separates Kukachu from Frankendale, but he sold that off. The only land he kept was his garden that's right here in his backyard. Sometimes the old man's garden is full of tomatoes, purple hull peas, and a whole lot of squash. and other times it's covered with watermelon, collards, and string beans. That's because he's always changing his mind about which crops are best. Though one thing's clear. At 6 acres, Old Man Adams' garden is the largest in town. Why, I reckon the whole Negro side of Cuckoo could fit right inside it. I was 5 when I started working in his garden. It was only last year, when I turned 11, that Uncle Bump decided I knew enough cooking to help Elmira in the kitchen. Now, instead of hunching over to pick squash, I stand up straight and fill gleaming vases with daffodils that have already been picked by someone else. And instead of cutting my fingers when I dig up sweet potatoes, I turn the silvery handles on the kitchen faucet till the sparkly water flows out. My favorite thing to do here in the big house is a secret. Sometimes I watch television in Old Man Adams' living room, so long as the other servants aren't around. Uncle Bump lets me. I flip through the 3 channels on the black and white set till I decide which show is best. After that, I settle onto the sofa and press my bare calves against the cool leather. One time, Uncle Bump even made lemonade and plunked down right next to me. Then we watched the old film Poor Little Rich Girl from start to finish. Today, even though I'm working beside Elmira in Old Man Adams' kitchen, everything's different than usual. I look over my shoulder into the dining room where Uncle Bump gives the old man some slippery elm to help clear his airway. The old man, just a shadow, sits in his rocking chair beside the old table, while the chandelier above the table lights up each of his chalky wrinkles. The mayor, the sheriff, the white preacher, and 7 other white men join Uncle Bump hovering by the old man's side. That's because everyone knows how much is at stake once the stale air blows out of his nostrils for the last time. You see, Old Man Adams has no siblings, was never married, and has no relatives to speak of. So the white folks are sure when he passes he'll leave his property to one of them. While the white folk feast, Uncle Bump steps onto the kitchen to see how me and Elmira are getting on, and that's when Elmira tells him the dreaded news. I've seen many a man close to death, and right now our dear Adams is too. Me? I've never seen a dead man before. But now Elmira says, it's time to take the pillow from behind his head, Bump. When you're ready for home, all the everlasting tea in China can't keep you on earth. So Uncle Bump sighs and returns to the dining room to do as Elmira says. But I won't let my uncle be there alone. I follow him, and to make like I'm busy, I take a shiny pitcher from the cabinet and polish it some more. After Uncle Bump removes the pillow from behind his head, Old Man Adams wheezes one last time. Then his face falls gently onto the table beside a vanilla cake. While the white preacher lifts his hands above Old Man Adams and murmurs a prayer, I drag myself back to the kitchen. I remember how Old Man Adams' ivory corpse was filled with life, how a year ago he welcomed me to the big house and showed me where he hid his chocolate under the fridge in the refrigerator. Here's for when you think you need something sweet, he told me with a wink. Of course I never dared take a piece. I didn't want to give Elmira a reason to send me back to the fields. When the men from the funeral parlor arrive, they heave Old Man Adams' body onto a stretcher. They drape a sheet over him and haul him out the front door. But the click of the closing door, it has nowhere to settle. And with the old man gone, there's too much echo left in the dining room and no reason for the white folk to stick around. They file outside, heads low, voices lower, all of them praying Old Man Adams left them the property in his will. Now Uncle Bump lumbers into the kitchen, where I'm waiting to give him a hug, but he steps right past me, out the servant's door. Unlike Uncle Bump, Elmira's grief erupts out each pore. No better man, she cries. She leans her elbows on the sink, hangs her head between them. No better man. Elmira dries her eyes on the corner of her apron, then leaves the big house too. While I follow her out the servant's door, I try not to think of all the good laughs we had in the kitchen. I try not to think it's the last time I'll ever be in Old Man Adams' place. Outside, Elmira and me can't find Uncle Bump anywhere. Then a ghost-like note dances through the air. We trail the sound through the backyard. And wouldn't you know it, there's my uncle, his back against the garden gate, blowing grief out of his harmonica.